Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is CJ. It's time to catch you guys up on the last couple of weeks in the reef tank. Those preview clips at the beginning, there's a few topics we're going to cover this video, so I figured it's better to show you than to tell you. Try something different, right? But let's go ahead and get to this update. Now, as you guys can see, if you haven't figured it out already, test kits on the left are the standard API test kits that I've been using for the last year and a half. Honestly, the same test kits I've been using for my time in the hobby. It's time to make a change. So in comes the Salifert test kits. Now we're going to get into this a little deeper in the end of this video, but for now, give you guys a preview of what's to come. We definitely test everything in the reef tank. Got some interesting results, some good, some bad, some that I just couldn't confirm. So we're going to talk about that in more detail at the end. So let's go ahead and keep it moving with this update. We got a lot to cover. So on my last reef update, I shared a possible issue with Bryopsis in my reef tank. And if you're new to my channel and you're wondering, what I'm talking about, go check that video out. I'll put the link down below, and you should be able to click on it on the top right as well. Actually, top left of your screen to get to that video easier. But in a nutshell, I got Bryopsis in my tank, and I had a master plan of manually removing it, good water quality, and last but not least, last second measures as far as adding Tech-M or some kind of chemicals to help me, rid myself of this algae. So this is an update. 2 weeks later, what happened? Where am I at with this battle? Well, in a nutshell, I didn't get too far. Roughly 2 or 3 days later, every patch that I manually removed started to grow back. So I had to go with plan B, cutting the GSP. So in the back of my mind, I knew this was a possibility. So I kind of kept an eye on where it was actually growing. And from what I can see, the portions of the GSP that were branching enough to where it was folding over on itself was housing little pockets of Bryopsis algae. I'm wondering if it found some kind of hidden nutrients or something that was trapped in the GSP and was growing there. So the good news is it's branching. So just take some scissors, snip, and remove it from the reef tank. I'm just kind of showing you guys there's a few different patches that were pretty obvious. And the good news is after removing this, I have not seen it grow back in the GSP. So this is roughly a week and a half since then. And, all signs are that it may have possibly worked. So hopefully, fingers crossed, knocking on some wood. And for the most part, I think I'm winning the battle. But I know I haven't won the war, but this is definitely a good start. Now, for anyone new or, wanting to start the hobby, I can promise you, it doesn't take you long to figure out the lessons and never stop coming. And this is what happened in this situation. Now, if you follow me, you may remember me calling this top of my rockscape, the high flow, high light area, my SPS graveyard. Basically, any leftover frags I have that I'm trying to grow or keep alive in my tank, my experiments. And this is pretty much the result. If you guys haven't figured it out yet, this is what happens with GSP meets one of your millipora cores. And not only meets it, completely overgrows it, wins the battle, and almost just, consumes it to what it looks like the Blob or something, if you guys remember that movie. But definitely food for thought for anyone new. Pay attention to your GSP, but don't forget corals around it, and have an exit plan or a strategy to, rescue corals if you have to. So just figured I'd share that with you guys. So let's go ahead and fast forward to the reef tank as it is today. And by today, I mean tonight, because that's pretty much when I can record, without that damn glare from outside. Unfortunately, summertime doesn't get dark till 9, so it's kind of what we're stuck with. Roughly 30 minutes before it lights out, this is what the tank looks like. I'm not complaining. Definitely been a pretty eventful last couple of weeks. Got really busy with life and ran out of salt. It's nothing worse in the hobby, especially if you, do your tank with water changes and no dosing like me, to run out of salt and break your routine. So it did have some negative effects. We're going to kind of cover that. But first, let's go ahead and cover some changes. It's been some subtractions, some additions. So we're going to cover my process with adding new life and, a few things I learned along the way. So let's get to it. So I finally had time to resolve this clownfish situation. If you guys follow my channel, I really just kind of lost taste for having these guys in my reef tank. They were the definition of, all bio load and no show. These guys just hosted my mag float in the back of the tank. Never did anything besides come and eat and just hang out back there. So decided to go ahead and remove them. Now the funny thing is, I had to house them on a temporary compartment, one of the air-driven breeder boxes that you hang on the tank. And one night I came down, actually the night before I traded them in, and found this guy in the sump. So he must have, made a dive for his life from getting harassed. I'm assuming they're harassing each other. and landed in the sump. I'm glad he did, because he easily could have, ended up on the floor as a fish potato chip. And we all know you can't get credit for that. So in a nutshell, these guys have been removed. So after a quick trip to my LFS, and by LFS I'm talking about Aquatica. That's a local saltwater store near me. It specializes in just saltwater, so that's always a good place to shop. And it's pretty much where all my corals came from. I would say 98 to 99% of the corals in this tank came from that one store. So I actually have a video on that, a store tour, walk through everything, livestock, supplies, even do an interview with the owner. It has a gem tank in there. I definitely cover that in that video. So if you're new to my channel, haven't watched it, check that out. I spent a lot of time in the store, had fun making it, and it's definitely a fun watch. So with that being said, I mentioned this for this reason, just kind of a word to the wise, or a little food for thought for anyone that's new in the hobby or thinking about it. Be careful where you shop. I learned this the hard way in my first reef tank with a lot of other lessons. For one big one is, not dipping my corals, which is something that I will never do again. But the reason I'm mentioning this is, if you find a good place to shop that has disease-free and mainly healthy corals, a nice setup to where everything's clean and well maintained, stick with it. You get yourself in trouble when you buy one piece from here in this store that's kind of, suspect or questionable, to a Craigslist deal, the guy that's breaking down his tank, to just places that you just shouldn't buy corals from. You throw all that in your tank, and then you don't dip your corals. And even if you dip your corals, sometimes that that won't help you. And you expose yourself to all kinds of problems. And in this hobby, we got enough problems as it is, so just make it easier on yourself. So in a nutshell, just kind of a little food for thought for anyone new. Be careful where you shop. So for those that are curious, this is what I use to dip my corals in my reef tank. It's called Revive Coral Cleaner. And believe it or not, this is the same original bottle I purchased when I purchased this tank, and I'm just now running out of it. So I probably got a few more dips left. So great value, 10 to 15 bucks. And you dip your corals for about 15 minutes. I've seen all kind of critters and bugs, some good things, some bad, bristle worms, some copepods, all kinds of other things. I even killed one of the crabs that live inside of my SPS when I had it. I dipped it and it killed the crabs. So definitely some potent stuff. Highly recommend it for those that, are in the hobby wondering, what coral cleaners are good. I'm telling you, I've used this stuff. It hasn't failed me yet. So besides dipping corals, something else I'm trying to actually get a little more patient with is acclimating my livestock. Now in this container, I got a few new additions. I'm recharging my cleanup crew, about 10 hermit crabs. I added an additional conch snail, and I picked up another shrimp. Now I know you guys thinking, hey, I've had bad luck with shrimp, but I have to rule out, my poor acclimation methods I used before as being the reason, they died. And I'm gonna take my time. So I'm shutting up a slow, drip acclimation, pretty much to where this container is completely filled. Then I pour it out and start the process over again. So I did this for roughly 30 minutes to an hour, and I'm hoping that this acclimation method eliminates that as a reason, and this crab lives and all my cleanup crew survives as well. Now I did cover adding corals to my tank in a previous video. If you haven't watched it, I'll put a link down below for you. But in a nutshell, super glue is the way to go. It's only a few situations where, I believe putty is a better option. Specifically, that SPS, that Salifert coral to the left, that's the only coral that's puttied down in my tank. I believe in, super glue because it's a non-permanent option that's pretty sturdy. And if you leave something left over like this, just take some scissors or any tool you have, which is probably better than my scissors, and just chip it out. If you do it right, it'll come off in one solid sheet, and it's easy to remove. So definitely, my high recommendations, use super glue, whichever, reef super glue you have, and roll with it. So at this point, I got most of the super glue off, and it's time to glue down my new coral. Now I ended up picking up a small frag of orange digitata. This is my first time ever having this coral, and I figured, hey, my Salifert is doing well, so let's try some more SPS. Now that's the good news. The bad news is, when I tried to cut the frag plug, because I hate frag plugs, the stem on the bottom was super long, and I put too much pressure and broke my damn coral. I'm really kind of ticked off about that, but the good news is, as you guys know, any frag in this hobby can keep growing into something else. So I kept it. I'm basically going to attach it right next to this area in the rock work. Hopefully it didn't crust, hopefully it does well. If not, lesson learned. But definitely, if it does do what it's supposed to do, it's going to be a nice addition to the reef tank. So I hope you guys enjoyed that quick look at the reef tank. You know, I always tell myself in this hobby, you gotta soak in and enjoy the good days when you have them, because the problem is always lurking, waiting around the corner. That's pretty much how I feel, at this moment at least. You know, I can sit in front of the reef tank, crack a cold one, enjoy everything that's going on. You know, there's so much life we can create in these little ecosystems, and the deeper I go in this hobby and the more experience I gain, you know, the more rewarding it is. So, you know, for anyone that's on the, on the fence and like, man, should I do it, should I not? If you're prepared to do it, and you've done your research, done your homework, dive right in, man. I'm telling you, definitely well rewarding. You know, it's a lot of work, but definitely a big reward at the same time. So let me go ahead and give you guys a quick update on the coral and livestock situation. As I said before, you know, everything's doing fairly well. And as far as those clownfish go, I did return them, but I did not replace them with anything. So on my final stock list, and I say final for the moment, it's going to be a flame angel, flame hawkfish, 2 chromis, 3 wrasses, and that's it. So, I mean, if you guys are curious about what my stock list is, check it down below. I got a full equipment stock list, all the information you want, any question you may have, you'll find it in that description box. But as far as future plans, don't know when I'm going to replace them, honestly. Don't really care to at the moment. I'm just going to enjoy a little less bioload in the tank, a little better water quality, you know, and less fish. So for the moment, that's how I'm going to roll with the livestock. So as far as corals go, honestly, the only new addition was that orange Jatata I mentioned earlier. Everything else is the same. Now, it doesn't mean I don't have any drama, because it's never ending drama in my tank. This many corals, this many sweepers, you know, it's bound to happen. So the victim this time ended up being my 8-can coral. Now, I thought it was completely safe. The Gyre's flow pattern, you know, was manhandling those purple torch tentacles, making them all go to the right, keeping everything safe, until one day it just didn't happen anymore. So I ended up reaching up, and I ended up losing 2 or 3 heads on the 8-can coral, moved it to the right pillar thinking it was going to be safe. And then I think these corals have 6 senses or something. My frog spawn on the right side of the tank decided to send sweepers out as well. So I'm going to have to move that guy somewhere else, probably to the sand bed, and put a new coral there. You know, I did have my eye on a piece of red Setosa coral. I think that'll be a great addition for that piece of the rock work. Who knows? Hopefully it happens in the near future. But for now, I'm just rolling with everything in the tank as it is. You know, I'm just going to try to maintain and let some things grow in a little bit more. So that's pretty much what I want to cover as far as coral and livestock. And I know some of you guys are wondering, hey, you know, wait a minute, what's up with that shrimp? Well, he's doing well. Ended up picking up a coral banded shrimp. Never had one of these guys before. Heard they're pretty mean, they get pretty big, and I figured with a tank full of, you know, possible shrimp eaters, this is my best bet. And I'll tell you what, this guy's holding his own. You know, he's really taking ownership of that large KO on the left side. I watched him chase off my flame angel, and none of the wrasses seem to want a part of him. So he's definitely, you know, hopefully a welcome addition. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is probably can't add any more shrimp, because I heard these guys are definitely mean and can get territorial and kill other shrimp in your tank. So good news is I got a shrimp. Bad news is it's probably going to be the only one. So let's go ahead and dive into this test kit situation. As you guys know, as I mentioned before, you know, I've been using API test kits for, you know, pretty much my whole time in the hobby. I've never made the investment and, you know, decided to get anything else until now. So I ended up going with the Salifert test kits. I know there's different options. There's better options, Hanner checkers and all kinds of other stuff. But my thought was I need a better baseline of test kits to check everything. Then I can start spending more money on more specialized things for individual tests. And that's pretty much what I'm doing at this point. So with that being said, let's get to the results, because, you know, I was kind of happy and kind of aggravated at the same time. But either way, let's go ahead and talk about it. So as far as first impressions go, you know, a test kit's a test kit. Read the instructions, you know, read the result. So nothing different with this compared to the API. It's just going through it the first time. As you can tell, got to get every booklet out, read everything, make sure everything's measured right, make sure I was doing it the correct way to get an accurate result. So with that being said, you know, the calcium test, pretty on par with API as far as the results. Magnesium I've already been using, but the alkalinity test definitely was a surprise. My API test kits had me around 9 or 10 DKH. The entire time I thought I was okay. Only did I find out that my alkalinity was way lower. It was at about 7.4 according to the Salifert test kit. So I immediately kicked up my water changes to go ahead and get that stuff back up to where it needed to be. So it was definitely a interesting result, to say the least. Now, the other interesting results were my phosphate and nitrate test. They both came back 0. So I'm thinking, man, you know, 0 phosphates and nitrates, that's too good to be true. You know, after doing a little research, talking to a few people in the hobby, a few people on YouTube, I found that to be the case. It was too good to be true. So at this point, I had a few options I could do. One is hopping in the car, driving to the LFS and comparing there, or use my tap water and my API test kits. So that's the route I chose to go. Now, as far as the nitrate test, I checked my tap water with Salifert, and I got close to 5 to 10 parts per million, which actually was the same as API. So that seems pretty trustworthy. I'm no problems with the nitrate test kit. Phosphate test kit was a whole different story. My Salifert test kit was still reading 0 from the tap water, so I went ahead and used my API test kit to double check it. Now, of course, as you can imagine, tap water is sky high, anywhere between 2 to 3, maybe even higher parts per million. And my tank water was a huge difference, as it should be. And it's anywhere between 0 and 0.25. So, I know the accuracy is hard to read, but the discrepancy is what I was looking for, and that's what I got from the API kit. So, in a nutshell, I really feel like the Salifert phosphate test kit, huge disappointment, huge waste of money. And I pretty much should just save that money and put it towards a Hana checker or, EOS or whatever it's called. I mean, I know there's other options, Red Sea, tons of other options I probably should have tried for that. So FYI, for anyone that's thinking about it, save your money only on the phosphate test kit. Everything else seems pretty legit. So with all my tests completed for my reef tank, next thing I had to check out was going to be my new batch of salt. Now, I know I mentioned this to you guys a few videos ago that, hey, I was running low on reef crystals and I was going to change salts, but I didn't tell you what I was going to change to. Well, here it is, guys. A 200-gallon box of the same old salt. I know some of you guys follow me, you already knew I used reef crystals the whole time, but for those that are new, I was this close to switching salts. I had it in my mind that I wanted something that was cleaner, I wanted something that was more consistent and all that stuff, but ultimately, I had the Aquavitro salt in the shopping cart. I had read all the reviews, I found out that it still left residue in the bucket, and, it came good, and, I've seen different problems with heating and, cloudy water with water changes that just made me questioning it. Now, that was part of the reason I didn't make the switch. The other reason was test kits. It dawned upon me that I may have been operating within my tank with possible, bad results and inaccurate results. So this wasn't the time to make the change. I wanted to put all my efforts in better test kits to get better, understanding of my tank's chemistry before I make changes. That way I'm not making blind changes and getting unpredictable results. So I'm not telling you guys I'm never going to change salt, but what I am saying, a 200-gallon supply is probably 6 to 9 months worth of salt for me to take my time and, learn my water's chemistry a little better with better test kits and hopefully make a, more educated decision on if I even need to change my salts, or by that time, do a little more research and pick which brand I'm actually going to move to. So don't really need any suggestions yet. I definitely have a lot of time to figure this out on my own, but what I will say, I'll keep you guys updated. So let's talk about the test results really quick. I did mix up a brand new batch of salt with the new mix and checked it out with the Salifert test kits. Now, as to be expected, we all know reef crystals doesn't have lab grade, quality assurance, so you're going to have inconsistencies, but we're going to compare it anyways, right? So on the box, it should say, I think it says 455 for your calcium is what it should be. Of course, I was reading higher, it was close to 490, 500 almost. And as far as the magnesium on the box, 1360 or so, I was getting a little lower, around 1290 or 1300. And my alkalinity was around 10.8 or 10.9, close to 11 on the box. Now, comparing that to the API test kit on my last batch, I was getting close to 10 or 11 on my alkalinity, which is weird because that sounds, pretty close. And the calcium I actually did not check, so I can't compare that. So with that being said, like I said, I know it's inconsistent, but keep in mind, this is enough salt to last me for 6 to 9 months. And as long as each bag of salt in the 200-gallon box is even or consistent, then that in itself is consistency for my reef tank. So that's what I'm going to roll with for now. The good thing is I got test kits that I can keep an eye on it with and really keep track of my tank's water chemistry. So with all that being said, I feel like I've given myself a lot better tools and a lot more power over my tank. Knowledge is power, right? So now I can kind of make some tweaks here and there to my water change schedule. My nitrates don't appear to be an issue. So now I can start focusing more on my alkalinity. I fully understand my magnesium, calcium is way above natural seawater. So for you guys who are going to try to give me hell over that, I'm more concerned with keeping my alkalinity consistent for now and just rolling with how I'm doing my schedule and going from there. I'll make tweaks as I learn and I'll keep rolling with it. As long as the tank does well, I'll keep on the path I'm going on. So the last change I want to share with you guys it's gonna be me putting some serious effort and finally nailing down the answer on this algae scrubber. Is it worth it? Is it working on my tank? And the only way to do that is to let it run solo. Now by solo, not everything off, but we're turning off my reactor and removing all the phosguard from my system. There's two reasons for this. For one, it's exhausted. I don't think it's been doing anything in my tank. It's been in there for over 3 months without me changing it. And for two, I think the API test kit, the phosphate result, may have given me a clue that my tank actually does not have a huge phosphate issue to begin with. So the only way for me to find that is to get a better test kit. I may have to go ahead and dive and get a handler checker for phosphates and let that algae scrubber run solo. I really feel with the growth and the maintenance routine I have on that thing, it's really doing some kind of work in my tank, especially with the lower nitrates. Something definitely is happening with that algae scrubber. So we're gonna get to the bottom of it, and I can finally hopefully answer this question for you guys. Is it worth it? Should you get it for your tank? We're gonna find out together, and I'm gonna do my best to get those answers for you. So with all that being said, it's a pretty good stopping point for this video. We can keep talking on and on and on, but I can't hold you guys hostage forever, right? Now on a serious note, I really feel like I got the upper hand on the Bryopsis by cutting it off at the root, actually below its root, and completely removing it from the tank. I haven't seen it come back since, so I know it's not over with. It could sprout back up, and if it does come back with a vengeance, I'm gonna switch my game plan up. Instead of going the chemical route, been doing a little research, got some suggestions. I'll go the natural route and try to remove it with, some lettuce, neuter branches, or, manual removal, managing water quality, keeping nitrates, phosphates low in the water column, and hopefully it'll burn itself out and never gets a foothold in my tank. Do have to mention one more thing before we go. For everyone that stuck around to the end of the video, I appreciate you guys, and I also appreciate everyone for getting me to the 5K mark. Big thanks. I always remind myself and remind you guys, I'm just a guy with a cell phone, one reef tank, and just sharing my experiences. And you guys, felt the need to tag along, and hopefully it keeps growing and the experiences keep getting better, and help you, help me, and help everyone, right? So other than that, let's get out of here. Hey, you guys always like, comment, subscribe, do what y'all do. Y'all be easy. Happy reefing.